On September 3rd, about a week and a half ago as of this recording, a tribute concert for the late Taylor Hawkins was held at Wembley Stadium. It was hosted by Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters and featured a ton of different artists who all comprised of Taylor's bandmates, friends, family, and a lot of his inspirations or his musical inspirations. I had a chance to check this out. I checked the live stream of it that was on YouTube, and it's also now available on Paramount Plus and a couple of other platforms. And I managed to fill in the gaps for some of the stuff that I didn't quite catch live. But it's probably the biggest musical event, at least of this year, and I want to talk about it a little bit because I watched it, I really enjoyed it, and there was a few things that surprised me, so I thought I would just give my favorite moments from the Taylor Hawkins Tribute Concert. And, of course, rest in peace to Taylor Hawkins. So I want to preface this by saying that I have to admit I'm not the world's biggest Foo Fighters fan. I do really like the Foo Fighters. I've at least a lot of their hits I'm a pretty big fan of. I never really dove into their discography, but I respect them as musicians. I respect definitely actually Taylor Hawkins, perhaps the most from the band. He's a really, really good drummer. I've seen him in interviews. He just seemed like he was a really charismatic, fun guy. He was an enormous Rush fan, as I am, so I always appreciated that about him and his induction of that band with Dave Grohl into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And he just seemed like a genuine, cool guy who I definitely say I admired. And am very sad to see pass away at such a young age. I mean, 50 is very young by today's standards, and he left us way too soon. So this was a wonderful way to celebrate his life, and I'm sure if he was alive, he would be very happy about all of the people that showed up at this concert to celebrate him. So as far as the actual performances and the show goes, I have to say it's probably one of the best tribute concerts I personally have seen, along with stuff like the Concert for George and even the Freddie Mercury concert, which I also enjoy. There's a few others, but this is definitely, in recent memory, probably the biggest and best concert of that nature. I do wish, on a side note, that we didn't need a tragedy like this to happen for big shows or festivals or events like this to happen. But, you know, c'est la vie, unfortunately, or as Paul McCartney would say, oubla di oubla da, I guess. But my overall impression of the concert was I loved it. There was a lot of great performances. There was a lot that surprised me, actually. A few artists that really surprised me. And I thought that everybody really put their all into the performances. And one thing I have to give to Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters is they really put together quite a show, and it was really interesting seeing some of the musicians that were a part of the celebration playing with each other and on the same stage as each other. My favorite probably image from the whole show is the very end when they're all arm in arm and you see some of these musicians together that you would just never see otherwise, and it was really cool. It was cool to see how one guy like Taylor Hawkins could bring together such a vast and different group of people. It was very touching to see. So anyway, on that note, my favorite, I have about 8 moments that I really, really loved from the show, and I'll just talk about them all really quick. My first one, which was my first really big surprise, because I don't really know any of these musicians really well, and the big one, Kesha, I know she's a pop artist, and her Chevy Metal and Coattail Riders did an absolutely thunderous version of the T-Rex song Children of the Revolution. The performance is really raw. It's a great, just rockin' classic tune. I love T-Rex. Kesha really put her all into the performance, I felt, and it's always really cool to hear an artist like her do just gritty rock and roll, and they really did the song justice. It was a great tribute to both Taylor and the late great Mark Bolan, who wrote the song, and I just really, really enjoy it. And it's probably, to be 100% honest, I'll say the second most surprising performance in terms of just it really subverted my expectations, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, that was really, really good. I liked all of the stuff that Chevy Metal and Coattail Riders did too. Their whole set was good, but Watching Kesha come out and just rock that raw performance of Children of the Revolution was just really cool to see. The next was Brian Johnson coming out to play with Lars Ulrich and Dave Grohl and rocking a couple of AC/DC songs. Justin Hawkins made From the Darkness also ran out for a minute and sang a verse or so of Back in Black, and that was kind of cool. I think he's a really good singer, and he's all over this concert too. He was really fantastic. Despite you say what you want about the darkness, Justin Hawkins is a phenomenal singer, and he really did a lot of music at that show justice. But this performance in particular is more about Brian Johnson coming out and doing his thing, you know, and it was really cool to see because Brian Johnson obviously hasn't been on stage much in recent years. I know he's had issues with his hearing that has prevented him from doing tours and things like that, but he sounded great. It was a cool tune. I'm not the world's big Lars Ulrich fan, but it was kind of interesting seeing him behind the kit and, you know, seeing the Foos there, and just it was a really cool performance. And I mean, AC/DC is always great, right? This next one was one of the biggest, really, I don't know, this one made me really smile. I really enjoyed this performance, and this one I think was the sleeper performance from the show because I think this band is quite an old, like, sort of classic rock, dad rock, whatever you want to call it, band that not a lot of people know of, and it's the James Gang. And so they hadn't performed together for, I think it was like 15 or 16 years before this performance. It's the original lineup of the James Gang featuring Joe Walsh, and to watch them come on stage, and Dave Grohl joined them for Funk 49, but watching their whole jam and seeing Joe Walsh there, I'm an enormous Joe Walsh fan. I really love him and the Eagles and the James Gang, and it was really cool to see those guys jam. Apparently Taylor Hawkins was a really, really huge James Gang fan, and Joe Walsh in himself is just such an entertaining guy, and he still sounds great, both his voice and his guitar playing. And to me, that was just that one knocked me off my feet a little bit. It was really, really cool to see them, and made me go back and listen to the first James Gang record again. So it was a good excuse to listen to them. But that was a really cool, again, sort of, I thought the sleeper performance of the evening, in terms of just the recognition that it's getting. Probably the biggest surprise for me, and this was funny because this is where I tuned into the show when the live stream was happening. So it was right at this performance, and I, you know, since went back and checked out some of the stuff earlier. But Wolfgang Van Halen on guitar, Justin Hawkins on vocals, the drummer of the Darkness on drums, and Dave Grohl on bass, and they thundered through some freaking Van Halen classics. I think it's On Fire and Hot for Teacher. Amazing. It was a really, really cool performance. It, you know, in my view, this concert was also sort of like of course it was mostly about Taylor Hawkins and it was celebrating his life and all that stuff, but I think there were these sort of mini tributes to other musicians that we've lost in the last few years. There were some Bowie songs that were performed, which I think were a little nod to David Bowie. As I said with the Kesha thing, they did a T-Rex song, which is sort of like a little mini, it's always a little mini tribute to Mark Bolan. And then we lost Eddie Van Halen as well very recently, so it was really cool to see his son just pick up his guitar and do essentially what his dad did, and he did it really well. And that really was the big moment, I think, that surprised a lot of people, because Wolfgang always has played bass in Van Halen for the last, I want to say, decade or whatever it was in more recent years with Van Halen, and a lot of people didn't realize that he could shred on guitar just as good as his dad. So that was really cool to see. And again, Justin Hawkins nailed that song vocally, and Dave Grohl playing bass. That was interesting to see too. So it was a really cool performance with musicians all sort of doing, you know, just it was a nice surprise for me, and I really, really enjoyed it. And it was a cool tribute to both Taylor and to Eddie Van Halen, which I thought was great. The other part of the show that I really enjoyed was towards the end, and that was when Roger Taylor and Brian May from Queen came out, and they had a few guest singers, one of which was Justin Hawkins, and they did a bunch of Queen songs. My favorite was Under Pressure. I really loved that version of it. And when Brian May came out and sang "Love of My Life" as a tribute to both Taylor and Freddie, I thought that was fantastic too. He's done that at many Queen shows, and he did that for the tribute to Freddie Mercury. So that was, again, just a really nice emotional sort of part of the show. Queen always delivers, and they were also one of Taylor Hawkins' favorite bands. From what I understand, I think it was like the first band he ever saw live. So to have legends like Brian May and Roger Taylor on was really great. And again, I think the singers really did those songs justice, and it was a really cool mix of different musicians playing some classic Queen tunes. And who doesn't love Queen? Queen's always great. Okay, the next one I have to acknowledge is, of course, the big surprise guest, which Sir Paul McCartney came out, and I saw him. I had the privilege of seeing Paul McCartney this year for the very first time, and probably the last time. And the man's 80 years old, and he can still bring it. And to see him come out there and support, Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters and Taylor Hawkins was really cool. He really brought that star power and that legendary thing to the concert. And I guess he never played the song "Oh Darling," which is one of my very favorite Beatles songs from my favorite Beatles album, live before. And to watch him do that with the singer from the Pretenders, I don't remember her name right now, but that was a really great performance. And Helter Skelter, watching Paul come out there and just surprise everybody was wonderful. He's an amazing showman. After seeing him live, I have such a new appreciation for the man, and he just brought so much to that, and it was a great way at the latter part of the show to just kind of really give like a nice sort of like not quite finale, but end to such a great day. So yeah, watching a living legend like him come out was just wonderful. Long live Paul McCartney. So there's only two more left here, and surprisingly, this isn't my number one. It's pretty close, but anybody who knows me knows that I am an enormous Rush fan. So for me, going back to this whole thing about smaller tributes within this big tribute show, a very emotional moment, and I think I can speak for a lot of Rush fans, was watching Geddy and Alex come out again, having not played together in 7 years, I think, since 2015, aside from the South Park anniversary concert, but that's a different story. But anyway, to watch them come up and then have Dave Grohl fill Neil's seat, it was really poetic in a way, because both bands lost their drummers in very recent history. Of course, we lost Neil Peart in early 2020, so that wound is quite fresh as well. And honestly, say what you want about Dave Grohl, man, he held his own playing that 2112 overture and Working Man, and Geddy Lee sounded as great as ever vocally, and him and Alex Lifeson, they haven't lost a thing in terms of their musicality and their ability. And while some other songs had that more of that emotional impact, just those two guys being there and watching them play, and them being kind of kindred spirits, both having suffered a similar loss. And I think Geddy even says in the performance, that when they went to play YYZ with David Bowie's drummer, Omar Hakim, I think his name is, that it was sort of a tribute to when Taylor Hawkins played YYZ with them at a Foo Fighters concert, as well as a tribute to Neil Peart. So it was kind of cool, because the Foo Fighters and Rush have always had this sort of like kindred spirit thing. They, the Foo Fighters inducted Rush into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it was very cool to see Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson there. And in a way, they kind of stuck out like sore thumbs in a good way, because Rush are so eclectic. But it again just goes to show, with Taylor Hawkins, like how diverse his musical taste was, and apparently of any other band, Rush was his band. So that was really cool to see those guys come out, and after such a long hiatus, play really well. It was excellent. And now for my number one sort of moment, or I'll say moments from the Taylor Hawkins show. It was actually the Foo Fighters playing because, I mean, say what you will, I mean, they aren't even, again, they're not a band that I am a humongous fan of. I respect them and I really like quite a few of their songs, but obviously it was a very, very emotionally charged moment or no, evening for the whole band, and particularly Dave Grohl because him and Taylor Hawkins were so close, you know. And watching him break down, singing a few times, and when he was introducing some of the artists, and when he introduced the show in the beginning, and his very, very sort of somber, bittersweet performance of Everlong, which is my favorite, you know, Foo Fighters song. I think that's far and away their best tune. And to watch him close the ceremony with that, and then he invited all the other artists to come on stage, and they're bowing, and he's thanking everybody. That was a really, really lovely way to sort of bookend it. But I think for me, probably the number one moment of the entire show, which I even found, you know, how could you not? I got a little emotional watching it. Was watching his son Shane Hawkins fill those shoes and get up there on the drum kit and play the song "My Hero" with his dad's band. And I mean, My Hero, you know, I'm sure that was who Taylor Hawkins was to Shane Hawkins, his father. So, and as a father, seeing that was very, very, that hit me very, very. It hits a raw nerve, you know, to a young 16-year-old kid who has lost his father. That is, you know, that's a very sad thing. And to watch him just go up there, and he looked like he was having so much fun and like he was doing his dad proud. That was, to me, far and away, despite how much I love, you know, some of these other artists like Rush and Paul McCartney and Queen and them, that was by far and away the greatest moment from the Taylor Hawkins show, because it was just so emotionally charged. And honestly, to watch him do what he was doing there at 16 years old was really remarkable, and was, again, an emotional experience. So yeah, that's my number one moment, I guess, from the Taylor Hawkins concert. So that's my thoughts on that, guys. I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk about that. Overall, I really love that show. Have you seen it? If you haven't, go check it out. There's a lot of amazing performances that I didn't even touch on. And just, it was cool to see all of those musicians come together. They are doing a second show in LA, which I think is happening later this month. I assume it's going to be broadcast in some fashion, and there's some other artists there, so I assume the set lists are going to change, and it'll be interesting to see what other musicians he gets up there. I did mention Stuart Copeland. They did some Police songs. Them Crooked Vultures were there. John Paul Jones was out there. That was cool. There's a great moment at the very end, which I really love, and when all the musicians are standing and they're taking a bow, it's like watching, it's like Geddy Lee in the middle, and on each side of him is Paul McCartney and John Paul Jones. If I can think of it, I'll put the image right here. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, three of the greatest bass players in rock and roll, just arm in arm. That was such a cool thing to see. And it'll be interesting to see who, you know, how those other different performers how they will add to another tribute concert. So it should be interesting. I'll be for sure checking that out. And thank you for checking out this video. What did you think of the Taylor Hawkins tribute concert? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Were you kind of in between? What were some of your favorite performances? Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments below. And until then, keep watching videos, I guess. I don't know. Just tune in next time for some more musical content. I'll hopefully see you all soon. Thanks for checking us out. Have a great day. Peace.